Excellent. All right, so here with me today is Jose Hernandez. He's one of the developers that works on TestStand. So the two of us are going to give you a brief overview of the TestStand gRPC API technology preview. And what the heck am I talking about? Let me move forward to the next slide and we'll take a look at what that is. All right. Oh, but before I do, let's get into our giants or females. So today I decided to showcase a young up-and-coming engineer. Her name is Angela Wang, and she founded this really cool organization at the University of Alberta here, where I live in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which basically was designed because she felt she didn't have much access as a youth growing up to technology. She was interested in that kind of thing, but just wasn't sure where to turn and wanted to make it more accessible to youth, whether they could afford it or not, whether they came from families with engineers or whatever their situation and background was. And so the program is really cool. It partners students in elementary through high school together with university students, and they learn things from machine learning to electronics and a whole variety of projects. So it really gives leadership opportunities to both the university students as well as good technology learning opportunities. So you can check it out. The website's there. They have people joining them from different parts of the world. So it's done virtually since COVID. All right, let's move on. So we've heard over the years concerns about TestStand's API and the ActiveX-COM interface that is going the obsolete way, and there are some concerns around that, and what are we doing next? And so we've started working on the gRPC API that you'll be able to use with TestStand. At the moment, we're in technology preview, so that means that we're getting started, and we know that there's a lot more that we're going to need to do to bring it to the same level of service, or the correct level of service, I should say, that you really need for working with an API with TestStand. So the remote procedure call API that comes out of Google is the protocol that we're using here. You'll see a fair bit of that throughout all of NI with gRPC drivers and some of the things that, if you saw John Barngart's talk earlier today where he talked about measurement link, it really is a technology that we are leaning into here at NI, and so it makes sense for TestStand to also leverage that. We're already in a place where we have an example using this API up on GitHub, and what it has is a server that's hosted in a TestStand UI, as well as a client application that can run in a separate process on the same machine or on another machine altogether. So you really are able to use some of that remoteness, getting started on some of that remote functionality. The example that leverages this gRPC API has a list of sequence files, and so you're able to select which sequence file you want to run. You're then able to also set up your station options and configure those there. And then you can kick off an execution, you can terminate, and you can break. That was broken, it's not broken anymore. So you can do all that stuff again, which is great. And you can get some status messages about what's going on the actual server side, which you would have attached to your test station. So the step status and a number of different bits of information that would come from that. We've just put events up on there, so it's using events now to do that, and that's in the very early stages. And the API and the proto files are actually available on NuGet.org, and we'll get into some of those details in a little bit. Some of the other stuff that's really just around the corner is headless, so you don't want to see the TestStand UI, you just want the server to be running there. I believe that is really close to being ready, and so you'll see that soon. We are taking a lot of feedback. We have a handful of lead users already in the technology preview program, and we're listening a lot to what they're saying as we continue to evolve this. So let me just go ahead and give you a demo of what I'm talking about, and I'm not going to play this. We're going to do this part on a remote desktop. So here what you see is on GitHub. If you search up TestStand gRPC on GitHub, you will be able to find this repo where you can find the README file that explains what you need to do. You will need to use Visual Studio the way things are right now to be able to work with this example. You can integrate directly with Visual Studio to put your Git repo in there and sync with it there. You can also go ahead and just download a zip file and then take a look at what's inside of that. So I'm going to just go over to the folder where I've downloaded the zip file. Within the zip folder, you will find a client folder and a server folder. If you look at this, what you'll want to do is find the solution, the Visual Studio solution, and that's what you want to open in Visual Studio. When you're there, you're going to go ahead and build it so that you can run your execution and then just go ahead and launch it. And now I'll just show you what it looks like. So that's the client that's there. So this is a C# UI, TestStand UI, that also has this server built into it. We'll start to show what the IP address is of that server, because that's some feedback we've gotten that certainly is information that would be useful for people. Over here in this separate process, we have the client application, and I can go ahead and hit connect over here. And what I will do is I will just select a sequence file. I'm going to pick loop forever because that's just a little bit more interesting to watch. So here I am, and I kicked off the application running from this client, and it is showing the same thing is happening on the server as what's happening here in the client. I can actually break and resume if something's happening and I want to take a look at what's going on. And because this one loops forever, I will hit terminate so that we can see what happens at the end, where your log will let you know all the stuff that happened as you were executing on the server. So that is a quick overview of the example. And if you wanted to go ahead and make some changes to the example and add more functionality of what you would want to have in a C# example, this is a great place to get started. If you're interested in actually going in and finding the proto files, which are located on NuGet, and maybe making a different kind of example, maybe you want to put a server in something that's not C#, or maybe you want to make a JavaScript-based front end or a LabVIEW front end, which we know a lot of people would really like to see that. So we're figuring out how we can deliver that option as well. I do see a question, and I want to address that now. So, sorry, Jasper mentioned that you can use the community edition of Visual Studio, and that's important if you aren't a Visual Studio user. And then, Jose, I don't know if you can answer this question. How much similarity is there between the gRPC LabVIEW protobufs and ours? I think they're very separate, but if you have more.
Yes, the protobufs. Yeah, it's different than the LabVIEW. LabVIEW uses like the, I guess if I understand the question, LabVIEW uses like the if I'm trying to remember, because I saw it a while back. But they use we use ASP.NET, and we use, I guess, the protobufs and all that, and the LabVIEW one uses C++. A different way of a different way of server, from what I remember. But that's all I know. I don't remember a lot of details.
Troy, we can try to get more information.
Yeah, get more information. Yes.
Follow up afterwards. So essentially, it is definitely different, because what we're doing here is we're providing access to the TestStand API that we had before. So it's basically giving you that same kind of functionality that you would have used with the COM API, except now it's using a gRPC API instead. And so the goal of the TestStand gRPC API is to control TestStand. So as opposed to relating to LabVIEW. Okay, let's take a look now. And I recorded a little demo from James to be able to share a little bit more in depth about how you might. Sorry, this is not the slide I want. Okay, so to give a little bit more explanation about the details of the proto files.
Now, how does this work? So in the client and the server, if you go look at dependencies, there's a package called, in the client, it's the gRPC client for TestStand. And if we go to the server, it has package to the gRPC server for TestStand. So this is where the actual gRPC API comes from. These projects in GitHub are just examples that use the API. So what does it mean to have this reference to a NuGet? So NuGets we distribute on NuGet.org. So first we went to GitHub. So now I'll go to NuGet.org. So here I am at NuGet.org. And if I go in here and I search for TestStand gRPC, I see that there's two NuGet packages. So there's a client package and a server package. So if I want to create a C# application that is a client and can connect to TestStand servers, then I would use this package as a dependency. And if I want to create a server, I would enable it to be connected to through the TestStand gRPC API, then I would use this package. So if you go to one of these, let's say go to server, you can just click on download package, and I'll say save link as, save it on my desktop. Okay, so I just downloaded this new package, NuGet package. Well, NuGet packages are just zip files. So what if you're not using C#? How do you connect to a TestStand gRPC server? Well, for any gRPC server, the way you generically connect to it is through the proto files. So this package here contains a C# assemblies that are compiled from our proto files, so you can use it immediately in C#, but it also contains the proto files themselves. So I'm going to rename this as .zip, and then Windows will let me browse into it as a zip file. And so if I open it here, there's going to be a content folder, and this content folder has a protofiles folder. And if I go down to the bottom of this, at the very bottom are all the protofiles. And these are the different APIs you can call, and I guess the documentation for them. So I'll tell you what they are. So the TestStand API proto, this is the basic engine API. So this is where you have like sequences, steps, engines, adapters, well, not adapters, things like that. There's also an adapter API where you have the specific APIs for each adapter, like .NET adapter, Levy adapter. There's an API to connect to Sequence Analyzer. There's one to connect to the TestStand UI controls, like the Application Manager, Sequence View Manager, and then the various classes that the UI controls use. You can also access. And then there's the synchronization API. So if you want to like set a TestStand mutex or a notifier, or what are some of the other things we have? A queue. If you want to queue something to TestStand, you could use this API. And then there's something that's not an existing TestStand API. So I'm going to open this first because it's the one different thing. The instance lifetime API. And so open this, and we'll also get a chance to see what a protofile looks like. So inside a protofile, you have services, and a service is the same thing as a class. So like, a step class or a sequence class. So we have an instance lifetime class, and it's got like each RPC is equivalent to a method or a property. So we got about 10 methods in here, and we have things like release or set lifespan. So what this is for is that when you call the gRPC API, let's say you get back a new sequence file from the engine, well, you get back an instance handle to that sequence file because you're on a different machine. And if you want to control the lifetime of the instance, let's say you want to tell the server that, hey, you're done with it, the server can forget about it, then you could call the lifetime release method and pass it the instance of that sequence file. So this is for all the object instances you get back from the various APIs, how you manage their lifetimes.
So I think we're happy to take a few questions. I think we have a couple more minutes here. But what I would also say is that if this is of interest to you and you're interested in getting your hands on this and giving it a try at the state that it's in, then by all means, go ahead and sign up for our technology preview. It will mean that we'll want to talk to you. So, you know, this is an early adopter program. Things will be a little rough around the edges, and especially we are looking for what it is that you need in order to be really successful working with this. And so, as you see, they are this is raw gRPC right now. And we are exploring what needs people have in order to really be able to be productive with this new API. So I'll see if there's any other questions that we missed. All right. Well, if there's nothing more, then what I will do is I will pass this along to the next presenter. Thank you very much.